Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Yep, that's right. It's time for 10 minutes of Torah. So I hope everybody is having the best possible week that you could have under the circumstances. And I think we have to just keep moving forward. And the Torah, if we approach it with an open mind and an open soul, has a lot to offer us in terms of identifying with where we are and helping us reframe it and giving us language that is helpful and insightful and has relevance with exactly what we're struggling with. And this week's Torah portion is no exception. It starts out with a conversation about an offering called the Ola. It sounds like hello in Spanish, Hola. And it has an interesting law. And the law is that though typically the time for the offerings were during the daytime, in this instance, it could be offered and burnt throughout the night. And it's particularly talking about the burning of the fat. Hektar chalavim ve'evarim. And that can go through the night. Now, there's no temple in Jerusalem. There's only the Western Wall. And so, of course, we're not offering sacrifices like we did thousands of years ago. However, the Torah is a Torah that is called Torah Chaim, a Torah of life. And so there is energy, there is relevance in every word, every syllable of Torah. And if we use our Kabbalah X-ray vision, we can look past the time that we're in. We could look past the circumstances that we're in and penetrate to the heart of Torah that is active in a way that transcends time and space and circumstance. And so the laws of the offerings, even though we haven't offered them for 2,000 years, are valid, are live, are viable. And obviously, what we're talking about is offerings whose nature is existential. We're talking about not offering incense or animal sacrifice. We're talking about bringing ourselves existentially closer to God. The word karban actually means to approach, to come close. And so the underlying theme, the raison d'etre of sacrifices, is intact, despite not having a holy temple. The law, which is an interesting law, that the fats of the olah, of this offering, can be burnt through the night, even though the primo time is during the day. What can that say to us as existentially? And I don't think we have to be great Kabbalists to find some low-hanging fruit, some meaning here. When we talk about day, we talk about an experience of life that is synonymous with day. Day is a symbol for when things are going okay, when things are straightforward, when things are predictable, when things are not connected with deep anxiety, with crisis, with despair. That's yom. That's day. The daytime is a symbol for a sense of security. We see where we are. We see, if we look, we see where we're going. We know what to avoid. We know what to expect. And so during a time of Yom, we offer sacrifices, meaning we are appreciative of living in a world of certainty, or at least relative certainty. We are appreciative. We offer a korban, a mental mindfulness korban, to acknowledge our appreciation for a life that is predictable, for a life that is to a large degree built on the system of quid pro quo, cause and effect. Obviously, even when we are filled with a sense of certainty, we know that there are forces beyond our awareness that are at work, but nevertheless, we certainly have the illusion of certainty, and that's something that we can't take for granted. And we say, thank you, God, for giving me a kind of a stability. Then there's times of crisis, like the time we're living in right now, which is easily characterized as a general time period of Laila, of lack of clarity, of nighttime, and a time where even our best and brightest don't have all the answers. And we're struggling. We're struggling for little tidbits of information. And every day, certain things are becoming more clear, and yet things that we thought were clear yesterday are less so today. So it's characterized by a Laila ambiance. And the Torah tells us right in the beginning of this week's Parsha that we have, even though it's not the primo and perfect time, but we can offer sacrifices, we can offer our mindfulness and dig deep to find gratitude and to find a way of coming close to our center, to God, even during the nighttime. And so the offerings, hektar chalavim ve'evarim, the offerings can be offered through the night. And so it's especially applicable to what we're all struggling with right now. And the sad thing is that we're in many ways having to struggle with it alone. We're isolated, we're quarantined. And we can't escape that. On the other hand, we can offer an offering during this nighttime that is an acknowledgement of the numerous ways we have of remaining connected, like the way we're connecting right now, that allow us to find solidarity and to co-offer the Ola in the nighttime as a community that is standing separate but yet praying together in many different ways. I don't know if any of you New England people have had the opportunity to read any of Andre Dubus's books, Andre Dubus III. It's spelled D-U-B-U-S, so I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but I'm pretty sure it is. And he has a book that is it's pretty intense. It's called Gone So Long. And in one of the characters in there, without getting into the depth of it, his name is Bobby. And he's Susie's boyfriend or husband. And he loves jazz. And in particular, he loves the jazz of Ornette Coleman, which is this wild and almost mystical form of jazz where everything is happening all over the place. It's like chaotic and disconnected. It's like an extreme form of jazz. And Ornette Coleman, in trying to explain the theory behind his music, says, that's how I've always wanted, and this is a quote from him, that's how I've always wanted musicians to play with me on a multiple level. I don't want them to follow me, he says. I want them to follow themselves, but be with me. So we are all, in many ways, we're offering the Karban Ola during the nighttime on our own, ourselves, and yet we are with each other. And one of the ways that we can strengthen that, the faith in that process, in our ability to be grounded during this night time and still have mindfulness and to still have mindfulness despite the adversity, is connected to another aspect of this week's parsha, of this week's portion, where it talks about the Ner Tamid, the light that never goes out. In the temple, in the Mishkan, in the temple in Jerusalem, there was something called Eish Tamid, an eternal fire. And we have a replica of that in every synagogue. It's the Ner Tamid that hangs over the ark. It's a light that never goes out. And existentially, the light that never goes out is the vitality of the human spirit, the resilience of the human spirit that is particularly on display during these uncertain times. It can call forth a despair, or it can call forth the presence and the existence of a reservoir of strength that we might never have imagined that we carry. But we do carry that fire, each of us. And that qualifies us. That fire, that Eish Tamid, that's our credentials that qualifies us to navigate during the nighttime, to offer the hekter chalavim vevarim during the nighttime, despite the challenges. And this week's portion is an energy that really speaks to each and every one of us and consecrates us, even though we may not be Kohanim lineage-wise. We are all mini high priests and priestesses today. Each and every one of us has the responsibility to bring light to our homes, to make sure that fire remains kindled, not just in us, but in those around us. We cannot be the ones who wait for our family members to inspire us, to lift us up. We have an equal obligation to not only lift ourselves up, but to uplift everyone around us. And let's not underestimate the power of a bad mood in close quarters. The power of a bad mood in general during daytime, meaning during times of relative certainty, is still quite damaging. But when we're at close quarters and one or two people are just isolating within the isolation and going negative, it can be devastating. Now, there's no judgment here, because this is a very difficult time. And so it's perfectly understandable that there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of frustration in homes. There's a lot of frustration in families. But on the other hand, there's a lot of light and a lot of cohesiveness and a lot of coherence that wasn't there before as well. So we do have the ability to really work this. As the Navy SEALs say, you got to work the problem. So we got to work the problem. And I'll conclude with one final detail from this week's portion that I think is important and relevant. It says that every single morning, the priests had to come into the temple and take the ashes, sweep up the ashes from the offering of the morning before. Now that could have a lot of interesting significance, and I think we'll save a different way of seeing that for another class later this week. But on a very simple level, the ashes that we're sweeping up from yesterday symbolize the normal life that we were living just weeks ago. And even if we weren't living normal lives, relatively speaking, to what we're living now, they were normal. And so it's very easy to fall into the trap of wanting to go back to our lives the way they were. So there's a couple things. Number one, like the Jewish people in coming out of Egypt, they were not always that honest about their former lives. And sometimes, even though they were struggling deeply in Egypt, for example, in slavery, they found ways to say, oh, I wish I could go back to Egypt to the way it was. So, number one, it's not always what it seems like, and the grass is always greener on the other side. But the reality is that our life is very different now, and it was so much better. So, assuming that, we cannot fall into the trap of wanting today to be yesterday. We have to sweep the ashes out of yesterday's offerings. Now, yesterday might come back tomorrow, and we all hope it will. It might not be the exact same. I think in many ways, God willing, we'll all come out of this, God willing, we all do, with a deeper mindfulness, with deeper compassion, with more love, with more tolerance, with more appreciation for what we have. And when we get there, we can talk about that. But right now, we're not at yesterday. And we're not at tomorrow. We're at today. And we have to sweep out the ashes of what was and clear some space for what is right now and work it. And work it for all it's worth. We have so many different ways that we can help others. And we each have to become, in our own homes and in the imaginative ways that we can be helping, we have to help. We have to nudge ourselves towards a newer coronavirus version of our best selves. Today, right here, we don't have to wait till this all changes. Because this is what we're dealing with now. And we're all Kohanim. We have to step up. So I bless each and every one of you with the blessing of the consecration of the priests, that we are all consecrating ourselves as priests, as individuals who can get through this, and who can take a leadership position in our own lives, in our own homes, in our own families, in our communities, virtually. And we consecrate like the consecration of the priests in the times of Aaron. It says that he sprinkled some of the blood. We don't have that today, but symbolically, existentially, metaphorically, he sprinkled some of the blood on the priests to consecrate them. He put it on their ears, on their hands, and on their feet. What does that mean? On the ears is our rededication to being sensitive to what others are experiencing, just like the difficulties we're experiencing. So we're all in this together. So we have to deepen our empathy. We have to sharpen the pencil of our compassion. That's our ears. Our hands is we have to not succumb to the circumstances and let it dictate to us. Obviously, within the framework of the law, we have to follow what our government officials who are working night and day, and we are so grateful to them. But within those guidelines, within those frameworks, we can use our hands, not just physically, but metaphorically. We can be creative. We can do things. And number three is our feet. We consecrate our feet. Now, in days when we were more at liberty to go out, so our feet was consecrated to step out on a pilgrimage. A physical pilgrimage. But today, the pilgrimage is an existential pilgrimage. Where are we going? It's up to us. Hopefully, we'll find the spirituality inside us, the Eish Tamid, and it'll help us reinvent ourselves for the now, for the here. And we can be the architects of a renaissance, a spiritual and emotional renaissance of goodness and kindness and creativity and love and light. Because we are all Kohanim and we all carry the Eish Tamid, the fire inside of us. Love you all, and I wish you a great day.